Hey everyone, and welcome to the AgeTech Connect podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Cottmeyer. Today, I'll be having a conversation with Thomas Bittings and Donnie Beamer, where we dive into how ecosystems of innovation are built and how up-and-coming innovators can succeed through leveraging their local innovation communities. All right, hey Thomas, Donnie, welcome. Thanks for coming on, chatting with me today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Donnie, I can't help but notice your U.S. men's team soccer jersey. I love that you're representing, a day early. We are recording this before the round of 32. So hopefully, by the time this comes out, we're still in it.
I agree. And so I put it on today, just of course to express excitement for what I think is going to be one of the best men's performances in a long time. We're also privileged to host 8 matches. And so tomorrow, Atlanta is going to be just electric with England playing here against
Yeah.
Congo. And then, of course, going into the evening to see the USA match. Hopefully, you can pop over to FanFest for that. And in
Hey, they all
between,
sold
deciding who
out
we're going to
once
play.
the men's team
Yeah.
started doing well.
Yeah.
I was able to make it to one, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm trying to scalp some tickets for another. So if you got any connections, I might have to hit you up.
It's embarrassing to say I don't know the person that can get even me into the
All
match, but I
right.
can
Well, let's
only
just go ahead and end this now then. All right. Well, I won't keep us talking about soccer this entire podcast here because I'm really excited to talk with both of you today. I want our conversation to revolve a lot around how we create local systems of innovation and especially innovation around age tech. And I think having this conversation with both of y'all is going to provide a really interesting angle on this. First of all, because you're both representing my hometown, Atlanta. Additionally, Thomas, you've experienced coming up as a young age tech entrepreneur in this ecosystem. So you know firsthand what it's like to leverage your community resources to create something successful. And then on the other side, Donnie, you work inside the city of Atlanta to make sure that our community is ready and able to support emerging technology innovators like Thomas. So, bouncing off those two ends of the spectrum, and before I speak too much for each of you, I want each of y'all to tell me a bit about your backgrounds and how you got to where you're at today. And just to make the decision easy, Thomas, could we start with you?
Sure, yeah. I'm Thomas Bittings, founder and CEO of Goldilocks Smart Solutions. We are a age tech company that our goal is to make bathing safer and easier for our elders. I originally started this company in my sophomore year of high school. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I was in an entrepreneurship class. And around that time, my great grandmother was going through challenges with her dementia, arthritis, diabetes, the whole nine. And as she was going through these struggles, the class said, find a problem in your daily life, think of a way to solve it. I came up with Goldie, which is a voice controlled shower technology system that allowed my grandmother to stay seated in her shower chair and control all aspects of her shower with her voice. So no worries about slipping or falling. And since then, it's really evolved. I've leveraged Atlanta's ecosystem heavily, winning multiple pitch competitions, raised a bunch of money there to get it off the ground. Goldie has evolved into a system that not only can react and alert caretakers of falls within 45 seconds, but our new version is now able to alert and flag fall risks weeks before they happen. So, really been able to use Atlanta's ecosystem, and here we are today.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. I work with a lot of older, as a physical therapist, work with a lot of older adults at risk of falling, and people just don't really consider the shower and the bathroom a lot. I think a lot of times because people don't want to, right? They think like, oh, I don't want to, and my mom's in the bathroom. She's gonna do her thing, and then I'll worry about the fall risk after she gets out. But that's like the highest place where people are most likely to have a fall. So it's really cool that you created a solution for that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like to think about it, but it's where 80% of falls happen for the people over the age of 65. So, it's definitely a hot spot.
And again, you can't get a physical therapist talking about fall risk and fall safety. So I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to go into that. But Donnie, what about your background? How did you get to where you're at?
so serve as the mayor's senior technology advisor, our Mayor Andre Dickens here in the city of Atlanta, overseeing the Office of Technology and Innovation. So been doing that for 3 years now. It is a new office. I'm the first to hold this seat. So
Very cool.
the mandate is we want Atlanta to be a top 5 tech hub. So one side of it is we want technology to help your citizen experience. hopefully
Mhm.
lighten traffic and improve our service delivery. But then the most exciting part of the work is we want that tech to be built in Atlanta. And so how do we make sure Thomas has the resources he needs to not consider going back to Chicago or jetting off to San Fran to have access to talent and capital and customers. So if we can be a customer, spending a lot of time to make the city easier to work with, attracting capital to town, and then keeping the talent here. And so my journey to this seat, though, reformed entrepreneur myself, but came
Mhm.
to Atlanta for Georgia Tech, studied econ, finance, worked in financial services. Then after business school, started a tech company. So it was here in ATDC, which is a great resource for builders.
Very cool, very cool.
It was kind of like a Coke Freestyle, the Coke Freestyle
Mhm.
machine at the touchscreen, but instead of soda, we sold cocktails out of the machine.
Oh, very cool.
And
That
so
sounds like more my alley.
right, you need one of those in the Fan Fest.
Maybe
But,
oh, that's true.
and so did that for 4 years before joining Cox, built a vehicle tracking and telematics system there, and then, say 3 years ago, they created this office, and my joke is like Liam Neeson, I've got a very particular set of skills
Mhm.
because 'cause I've been an entrepreneur, I've been an investor, I've been, a part of the university that has so much of the talent and IP that they're contributing. Now, just sitting in the government after some time in the corporate innovation sort of hub and center at Cox, I can speak the language of all of these stakeholders and hopefully bring them together so we can be more productive and let this be a place where it's fertile ground to build.
And I want to get into exactly how we do that. And I think one of the better places to start would be Thomas, tell us your firsthand experience of coming to Atlanta and building Goldilocks in Atlanta. So you said you started in Chicago and then you came
Yes.
to Atlanta afterwards. What brought you here and what resources were you able to leverage when you arrived to Atlanta?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, when I started Goldilocks in high school, it was through an entrepreneurship class, but I didn't know that class was connected to a pitch competition. I ended up winning my classes competition, the school-wide, then the Midwest regional, then the Illinois-wide competition, and then I would've went to the world competition, but then COVID hit.
Mm.
So, I used that experience in my college essays, and luckily, I got accepted into Morehouse College, and that's what brought me down to Atlanta, and right around the time when I was coming down to Atlanta, this is 2021, I'm actually still a student now, finishing up my senior year, but around that time, Morehouse was starting a innovation and entrepreneurship launchpad. So I was also lucky enough to be a part of that first cohort where we teach students how to take a good idea and turn it into an actual functioning business. And I was still on the high of those pitch competition wins. So I started looking around for different pitch competitions in my area, started with a lot of the ones in Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, and able began to expand across entirety of Atlanta. I've done pitch competitions with Georgia Tech, UGA, Thai Atlanta, a lot of the programs sponsored by Donnie's office. So it was a really great experience.
And how did the innovation vibe in Chicago versus Atlanta, right? Because I think a lot of people would consider Chicago as a little bit of a larger city and maybe more of a classic innovation hub. But when you came to Atlanta, was there anything that surprised you about the energy around innovation that you experienced?
Oh yeah, the energy was different from anything I've ever experienced. Like Chicago, it was just different, really. Like Atlanta felt so welcoming and everyone was always willing to help. That's part of how I met Donnie. Just going to a lot of these different competitions. He was there one day. And in Chicago, if I was to meet someone from the mayor's office, I would have been so shocked and surprised to see someone actually coming out. But to see someone like Donnie involved in not just a college pitch competition, but just a student-led pitch competition was amazing to see, and I've seen that across the board with all of Atlanta's leaders and all the different programs that I've been a part of. It's a very unique ecosystem. Like, I've now been able to travel to San Fran, New York, Chicago, all the different hubs, but nothing beats Atlanta.
I saw Southern hospitality. I want to say, Chicago, we're
Yeah,
coming for you. You're our target
yeah.
here. I'm joking.
I still have love for back home, but Atlanta is really the reason why I'm here today, so no hate at all.
Now, Donnie, I think Thomas brought up some really good points. For one, starting out of the universities, because we do have so many great universities in Atlanta. And I think a lot of times the ones that get highlighted most are kind of like the two biggest, like Georgia Tech and Emory. but we have so many universities, including like Georgia State, Morehouse, Spelman, in the area that are creating a lot of innovation. So, how have you and your office been leaning into the university resources that we have in Atlanta to inspire innovation from the ground up?
Hmm. And so I am, of course, biased as a tech alum, but
Mhm.
I
Yes.
think the benefit is there's nearly 60 colleges in the Atlanta metro. And so how do we help connect the campuses and the resources? Because they have specialties that vary across each location, and then sort of brilliance that may be different across each campus. And
Mhm.
so it's beautiful if Thomas can know some mechanical engineers at Georgia Tech or some lawyers at Emory, and then there had never been a well-formed forum for them to do that. And so we've got this consortium, it's called the Atlanta Collegiate Entrepreneurship Syndicate, or ACES. And what it's done is through programs like Avant South, we've got this big conference coming up in October. Hopefully, you can join us. We use that to showcase the talent and the innovation or the companies that are coming out of Atlanta that may be born from some of these colleges. And you'd be surprised at how, when you're just in your bubble on campus, you don't know about things like Atlanta Tech Village, which is the
Mm.
third largest sort of accelerator and startup hub in the country, or like the South Downtown Project. So if we can show young people these resources and make sure they have access to not just what's on their campus, but the whole of Atlanta, I think it helps, one, you take advantage of the resources so you can accelerate your business. But then two, build this connection with the city where you never want to leave. It's like Hotel California, right? You can check out,
Yeah.
but you never leave. And so my hope is that as people experience success and build their companies like a Flock or a Stored or OneTrust, right? These unicorns that, oddly enough, do you use Calendly? Are you familiar with the
I'm familiar with it. I need to start using it, especially to schedule these podcasts because,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so what's fascinating is I'll go to a room with 100 people and 90 of them know Calendly, but 20 of them realize that it's a Atlanta-based company with a
Mm.
founder that went to UGA, and he's Black, right? And so there are all these things that, if you're looking for, your career path, lots of it will be shaped by seeing someone that's done it before. But there are all these brilliant, successful entrepreneurs in Atlanta that people don't know exist. So if I can expose you to them and connect you with folks across campus, that next unicorn out of Atlanta is going to have, a team that has members from East Campus instead of just four nerds from Georgia Tech. And I say that only because I'm one of them, right?
The nerd term is used in debate now. You're getting a PhD. I love the nerd term. I'll own it, you know? Now, Donnie, how specifically are y'all trying to facilitate that awareness of all the resources in Atlanta? Because again, the problem doesn't seem to be so much a dearth of resources than it is an awareness of the resources. I was just on Georgia State campus and they have these really cool laboratories for creators, right? The 3D printers, sewing machines, soldering machines, the whole nine, and it was completely empty. And I was talking to the guy at the desk, and he said, "Well, people don't even know this exists, right?" And that seems to be the problem around Atlanta entrepreneurship. So, what are you guys doing to facilitate that?
So there's a platform that will launch soon called Connect Georgia. And
Mm.
what it is a catalog of all of the entrepreneurship resources across the state. So university-based resources like those maker spaces or SBDC, small business development centers in Augusta and Savannah. And so the investors and what sector they focus on. So if you have a question, let's say you are a physical therapist and you want to start your own high growth tech company, you want to know where to raise money or where you should go and build, you can go to Connect Georgia and then put that information in and we'll spit out resources for you based on your needs. Look out for that. We'll get you more details on the
Yeah.
launch. You can be there and be a part of it. But just pulling together a resource that anybody can go to and find what you need based on your stage and sector, I think will help people navigate the city and state more effectively.
Now, Thomas, did you have an issue when you were starting out in Morehouse and even through today in finding the right resources? Because you have an interesting problem in that it's almost easier to start just a software product, but you're a software and a hardware product. And then you have to get connected with the customers and it's in kind of like a specialty space. How did
Yeah.
you navigate that? Or how are you navigating that might be the better way to ask it.
Yeah, it was a big struggle when I was first building out the first prototypes, I was just in my college dorm. I ordered some parts off Amazon, and then I have a background in robotics. I did robotics all through high school, and I'm still a robotics coach in Atlanta. But I had all the electrical components. I put them together, and then I was like, how can I put these in a shell? I wanted to get a 3D printer, but those things were wildly expensive back in 2021. Now they're much more accessible. I have 3 literally sitting right next to me. But in my college dorm at the time, I had no clue how I could do it. Little did I know, Morehouse had a maker space, but I didn't know about that until my junior year of school. Freshman year, sophomore year, I had no clue. So if I was able to have some of these resources, I could have got my prototype out way faster. But just the things that I was able to be successful with was Googling entrepreneurial resources in my area. I looked up pitch competitions near me, makerspace near me, 3D printer near me. I just put in these terms. And I really think a platform like what Donnie's mentioning would be very useful for entrepreneurs coming up with these specific issues. Like, there's no really road book for how to build a hardware product. For software, I could just go on Claude and get something out in a weekend, but hardware is a different path, and it's a fun path. I enjoy it. It's my heart, but yeah, definitely was a challenge.
And then, Donnie, are you all collaborating with corporate or other commercial entities in the Atlanta area? Because I would imagine that when it comes to prototyping and developing hardware, there's only so much you can do with a 3D printer. Are you collaborating with manufacturers to get early entrepreneurs access to these sorts of resources?
So in terms of helping spin up or gain access to manufacturing, we haven't sorted that out just yet. I think there are a handful of maker spaces
Mhm.
that are on the horizon. So of course, David Cummings in South Downtown, they're building a new one. There's a space, Kicker Design is
Yeah, I've heard of
launching.
that.
Yeah, they've got one. Their grand opening is going to be in August. But the places where we're seeing a lot of coordination across the corporate community. Have you heard of Engage?
I
So
have not. No.
So Engage is a fairly novel venture platform, and what it does, you've got 15 of the local stalwarts, the Chick-fil-A's and Home Depots and Deltas, and if you solve a problem that is relevant to them, they become early investors and early customers.
Oh, very cool.
And so what it does is it helps you sell into that category, and then once you have those logos, I mean, it's much easier to sell to the next one because you know the process and you have that credibility. So that's about an 8-year-old program, Engage, and it's created hundreds of jobs. We as the city are looking to do our first venture investment that we've ever done out of our pension fund into Engage. And so I think
Okay.
for us to be participating as investors is a massive shift, and that's what you've seen in California with CalPERS and CalSTRS, those retirement systems that invest, and it's helped not just subsidize, but I guess galvanize that community so it's grown to what it is today.
Yeah, that's something that I had not considered. Leveraging some of the very large corporations that have come out of Atlanta, garnering some of that Atlanta pride and saying, hey, how about we invest in Atlanta residents and Atlanta companies to help solve some of the problems that you're having? Now, I got to ask, because it's Age Tech Connect, are there any big companies in Atlanta that might be relevant to like an age tech entrepreneur?
Thomas, you probably know better than I since it's your segment. But the great thing about Atlanta is that diversity of industry.
Mhm.
And so was 80% of the Fortune 500 is represented here. And so whatever you want to sell, there's someone to sell it to. And
Mhm.
you know, I probably should have had a good list of age tech brands when I jumped on here. But I guess what would be a Fortune 100 age tech company that you would think of?
One
So,
of them that I really think could really benefit in the age tech space and is already doing so is Home Depot. Definitely a product like mine, which is a hardware product that could be retrofit into any shower in 20 minutes. We're definitely looking to be on Home Depot shelf soon. So partnerships like that, when you spoke about the Engage platform, it instantly piqued my interest.
That's a fair point because when you consider they say 10,000 people turn 65 every day. Is that still true?
Every single day. Yes.
And so hopefully we'll all be blessed to be a part of that segment. But if you're in retail, if you're in travel, I think Delta, you know, just to be one of our most known travel brands, everybody has to think about this segment, right? Because it's a
yeah.
growing segment of your customer base.
It's probably not gonna be so many there's a big Fortune 500 age tech company, But every Fortune 500 company, once you get that big, you have to interact with older adults to sell your product. So I was thinking, things like Cox Communications. I say this because my wife works for the AJC, but they stopped selling their paper, right? They only have a digital product now. He's getting emails as the marketing, and they're like, "Hey, where's our paper? We want," and it's like, if you had an age tech company that solved that problem for Cox Communications of like, how do you get more older adults engaged in digital media, right? That would be a really good example of that.
Mm. Mhm.
Now, we've been talking a lot about early stage entrepreneurs, but as these companies start to get bigger, right? So, like, let's say Thomas with Goldilocks, you start to grow, you start to get on the shelves of Home Depot, you start to generate more revenue. How do we create an ecosystem that's able to keep this innovation inside rather than letting Thomas fly off to another city, right? How do we keep that innovation in Atlanta?
It's 2 or 3 thoughts. The first, I feel Atlanta is one of the best places to scale. So once you get past this early stage where it's been de-risked, like I said, back to the customer base, whether it's B2B or even just being one of the 6 largest cities that also has the world's busiest and most efficient airport. So if you're trying to reach people, you can get to 80% of the US population with a 2-hour direct flight. So I think for it to be your commercial hub, it just makes a ton of sense to stay here. The second thing is it's also when you talk about the talent pool and cost of living, it's hard to beat that. So we don't need to do much there beyond just making people aware of it if you didn't know. Because the final thing is getting people to step out of Hartsfield to see what the city has to offer. That's been a challenge. And the World Cup's been amazing because you've brought people in from across the globe and they're excited about Waffle House and
Yeah.
barbecue and ranch dressing. So
Yeah.
I think getting the word out is making a big difference. But there are ways that we can hopefully incentivize people to continue to do business. And I joked about this a little bit. Any company in Atlanta, you are flying Delta, you're shopping at Home Depot, you can't find a Pepsi in somebody's office. I don't even know if I should say that. Uh, and,
I don't think that
and
word's allowed on this podcast.
yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. But to a certain extent, like, how do we make it so brands are more comfortable taking the risk of doing business with some of the earlier stage companies, right? When you're on the cusp, because I think many of the, I'll call it just unicorns that are existing here, they're category defining or category leading. And so it's not as big of a risk. But when we stop thinking about it as risky or feel like it's almost an expectation, a norm in the same way that we treat those big brands, I think that'll be a big and important shift in our culture to help people grow and stay here. So once they exit, and you're seeing the IPO market opening back up with SpaceX and Anthropic. And so once Thomas goes public, buy a building or, name a street after him because he's paid for most of it in the same way that David Cummings has the South Downtown.
So, Donnie, you think that some of the issues that plague the awareness around the young entrepreneurs is really our big issue with getting successful entrepreneurs to stay in Atlanta, right? It's just the awareness of the resources that we already have. Do you feel that we've kind of like we built the infrastructure out? It's just getting people to utilize it when it comes to
Yeah.
scaling and expanding?
You'll see it on our website, the ATL dot motif that we have in our logo. It's about all the resources being here. You just need to connect the dots. And,
Mhm.
and that's the thing that we're trying to do is like, how do we make people aware? Because there are some legitimate concerns around access to capital. There's just more money in other corners of the US and people that have created their wealth through those means, through entrepreneurship and tech, that makes them a little more inclined to bet on another entrepreneur in the space. And so, like, the more wins we have, the more comfort there will be around taking that risk. But we just got to make sure that we can, in the AJC and other places, tell those stories and then, help support the outcomes however we can.
So, Thomas, how has your journey been? I was banking on you being in Atlanta right now, but tell me about your journey because you're in Tulsa right now. Are you there?
Yes.
Hopefully, you're just there on vacation, temporary hiatus, and coming back to Atlanta. But as you've grown your company, how has the city of Atlanta kind of evolved with you? And where do you see those resources really helping you expand?
Yeah, definitely. As I was growing my company in Atlanta, I really got involved with the Techstars Accelerator, met
Mhm.
some of the Techstars founders in the Atlanta program. And I was so excited to apply, and I applied and I got accepted into the Tulsa program. So that's what brought me out here,
Mm.
and I've spent the last year here just engaging with the ecosystem here. But like I mentioned earlier, nothing beats Atlanta. Like getting to connect with entrepreneurs around every corner. Age Tech Connect being started in Atlanta, started off as Age Tech Atlanta when I
Yeah.
first started interacting with them. Donnie was actually the person that introduced me to Jeff Gray, the CEO of AgeTech Connect. It's just an amazing experience, and being able to know about these different resources and growing with the city has really been so fun, genuinely. Like, every time I come back to Atlanta, all of my customers are in Atlanta, so I fly back often. So getting to see the new things every time I come back is just so inspiring, and thanks to Jeff and Ace Tech Connect, I'll actually be having an office in Atlanta Tech Village, starting in September. So I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have
And
to
you
come
know,
visit sometime.
it was funny. I think Thomas has been able to take advantage of 80% of the programs that have been created in the last few years. So first, there's this Lift program, the launch incubator for traction. So what it does is help deep tech entrepreneurs like Thomas learn the ropes on how to get investor ready and kind of clean up your pitch so you can go and compete for the age tech money, right?
Mhm.
Or real investors. And so, how much money have you raised so far, Thomas?
In just non-dilutive funding through pitch competitions, accelerators, most of them in Atlanta, about 185K. And then through actual angels, through the Morehouse Network and through Techstars, I've raised an additional 250K.
Nice. Congrats.
Real returns on betting on Thomas. And so then, I mean, add to that, he went through. Are you familiar with CreateX? It's an accelerator that sits within Georgia Tech, but it's open to student entrepreneurs and faculty members. We put another program on top of that called Tile. What it allowed you to do is also go through CreateX, which helps you sort of hone towards product market fit and building your product out. But then Tile, there's leadership development. We will give you housing where you get to stay on Georgia Tech's campus with students from other schools. So we entrepreneurs from Morehouse, Spelman, Georgia Tech, Emory, Georgia State, back to like bringing people together to share sort of expertise and their iron sharpening iron, but
Mhm.
removing the barriers of having to figure out your housing. In addition to paying for their housing, we gave them stipends. It's kind of like a co-op program where, as opposed to having to go work for John Deere or Home Depot
Yeah.
for 3 semesters, you get to work on your own startup. And so for folks that are either couldn't afford to do it because paying for the housing would be a barrier, or you're doing so well that you're considering dropping out. Stack on top of it, you can get course credit to work on your idea. And so we can retain you, help with degree progression, and keep those resources around you that can lead to better outcomes for everybody. And so we ran Tile for 2 cohorts, and they're now just thinking through how can we make it scalable and sustainable as a part of the experience as a student in tech.
So speaking of, we've mentioned a lot of these kind of point resources. It seems like a lot of stuff in Atlanta, and I've been kind of tongue in cheek, trying to lift up Atlanta. Got to represent the home team. But we have a lot of people who watch this podcast and in Age Tech Connect who are trying to build their own communities of innovation in cities across the U.S. and in cities across the world. I mean, obviously, the more people innovating, the better, right? Like having innovation in Tulsa or Chicago or wherever it may be really helps us all out, especially when it comes to age tech, just getting that word out there. So beyond just the individual resources in Atlanta, and Donnie, I want to ask you your opinion on this. What do you think are the kind of the necessary core components that make a community truly capable of fostering innovation? I think you spoke earlier, it was like, like capital, talent, and something else, right? Like, what are those core components that make it so that when you have an idea, you can actually execute on it in a community?
Yeah, and talent capital and customers, that's my
Not capital and
sort of 2
customers. There we go.
resources, the lifeblood of any ecosystem. So you need people that can help you build it, you need the money to do it, and you need somebody that's gonna buy it. And I think one of the biggest risk is when people are building a solution that doesn't have a problem, right? That can often happen, but that's not necessarily an ecosystem challenge, that's more of a, like, product market fit and customer discovery issue. I will say for other municipalities, because there's a like a growing, not I'm gonna say trend, but I think this is an important category because you can change people's lives with careers in this space, either as an entrepreneur or just working for a tech company, because the compensation is often 2.5x. I think if you look at the tech job here in Atlanta versus sort of just a medium other job, I think the median salary is like 2.5 times. I can't remember what the numbers are now, but it's a much more attractive offering. And so just making people aware of there's 2,500 startups here in Atlanta. And
Wow.
so it's not just the compensation today, but like if you're on the cap table, let's say you're the first, 100 employees at Goldilocks when it goes private, think about how that transforms the opportunity for you and your family. And so considering taking that risk early on, it's not just that people may not be comfortable, but they just don't know that he exists.
Mhm.
And so connecting the dots across, people that are looking for jobs, because right now unemployment amongst like recent college grads is the highest it's been in a long time. Like
Yeah.
even if you jump past the COVID dislocation, but it's scary times. So I think it's going to be important to have this innovation so you can have people that are creating more new jobs instead of looking for one.
Let's kind of make it more granular. If you were, a CEO, Age Tech Connect has a new location in, I got to think of a city that we don't have one in. Let's say we have a new location in Charlottesville, right? And they're saying, okay, I need to create a community that can foster innovation in age tech. How would you suggest that they begin getting together that talent, capital, and customers all in one place so that when they bring innovators in, they can be successful? Leveraging the city government and stuff like that, because I think that would be, your expertise.
The great thing about Atlanta, I think the stars are aligning, right? And so you had, if I consider what in some frameworks are the five sort of core stakeholders of the government, corporates, entrepreneurs, investors, and I think universities, right? All of them had this mandate or started to prioritize entrepreneurship in tech.
Mhm.
And so to a certain extent, you gotta, like who likes you. You need to find people that are invested in this in the same way. And then having some winners. There has to be some examples for your credibility and also just for memberships, people that have done it before that want to participate and support others on the journey. So, like if I wanted to be a country music town, or let me think of something obscure that we don't have. Because the other weird thing about Atlanta, which also causes brand confusion, we're good at a lot of things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I would say if I wanted to start like a beach centric business, I shouldn't do it in Atlanta because we don't have one, right?
Yeah.
So it has to make sense. So you mentioned what is it, Charlottesville? And so
Yeah.
thinking about, of course, you've got UVA there, right? Fantastic school, tons of talent. And so what are the industries that are usually tied to that region? And thinking where you can start, where you've got traction and a track record. I think that helps a lot. The other thing that I've learned in this seat, it's like everyone wants their priority to be your priority, right?
Mm.
And so if instead of trying to convince someone to care, find the people that already do. And then if you can bring those people together to scale something, I think that's a much more effective path. 'Cause I've made that mistake many a times trying to convince you to do my thing instead of helping you do your thing better because it would help both of us.
So it's really about just leaning into, what you already have in that community and what makes your community unique instead of trying to force something in there that doesn't really make sense for where you're at. Now, Thomas, you've obviously experienced this other side of it where you've gone to a lot of different communities of innovation. What are the things that you notice that as part of like a community culture that have really made you feel like, oh, wow, like I can be successful here versus what are the things that make you get into a community and say, I really don't have the resource that I have? What has been really sticking out to you in exploring these different communities?
Yeah, I think Donnie couldn't have said it better with those 3 pillars that help make an ecosystem great. And spent some time in Connecticut, Tulsa, Chicago, San Fran, and especially Atlanta. They all have those 3 pillars, but I think the biggest thing that is really helpful in each one of those ecosystems I mentioned is the awareness, being able to go there, and that's why I'm so excited for that new platform Donnie is launching, being able to see actually who is here to help you, what is already being done well, how can you fit into that, what sort of programs and initiatives are available for you to succeed is just good to see. And it's inspiring. Like when I was coming to Atlanta, seeing those success stories, seeing MailChimp, seeing Calendly, seeing those things and seeing that Atlanta is able to foster that growth, it was literally just like, hey, if they can do it, I can. So just being able to see other people following those footsteps.
Do you have any advice for young entrepreneurs entering into a new community? Not so much for them finding the resources, because we've talked a lot about that. But if you have a young entrepreneur that wants to be a part of expanding that innovation community, because I think a lot of these things are you really get out of it what you put in. And
Mm.
so instead of coming to a community and say, what can I get from this community? How have you felt that you've been able to enter into a community and add to the value of that community?
Yeah, I think it's one of the building blocks in all of the entrepreneurship accelerators that I've been through, especially in Atlanta, and I think Atlanta does this really well, is customer discovery. Donnie mentioned it earlier. There are a lot of solutions out here to problems that don't exist. I think the first thing that you can do, especially for young entrepreneurs, is finding a problem, specifically like I did, that was very close to me, and then thinking of an innovative way to solve it. I think that if you can continue to do that, that is the basis of entrepreneurship. That is how you can make a business do well because you're actually providing value for people. I see people going about it backwards sometimes, and I fall victim to this myself. Like, even though I am the founder of Goldilocks, I'm always just thinking of a new gadget I could build, a new product I can build. But the first thing I always do, bring myself back, is who is this actually helping? What is this actually solving? What value am I actually providing that makes it my service worth what I would actually charge for it?
That's some hard hitting advice, Thomas. If you're a new entrepreneur coming into a community, just be good and have a good product. That's how you add to it the best, right?
Yeah.
Uh, don't be bad at it. That's good though. I mean, exactly. If you're a good product providing a good solution, just having your business in that area and bringing your expertise in is going to add to the community a lot, is kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, even past the good product, before you even start building anything, ask who wants it. Not even just who could pay for it, but ask, is this something actually worth building before you have a good product?
This is going to be a little bit of a hard switch because we've talked a lot about how in entrepreneurship and innovation is built up in an ecosystem, but there's kind of this second half of age tech ecosystems that we aim to foster here at Age Tech Connect. And that's about creating an ecosystem that allows older adults to age well and to age gracefully within your community, within your city. This could go to either of you, so I'll let you all duke it out for who answers first. But how do you think that we can leverage our resources and emerging technologies to make communities, let's say Atlanta or wherever we're at, great spaces for people to grow old in?
I think the biggest thing, and it's something that my team and I really talk about daily at Goldilocks, is dignity. Like, for these older adults wanting to age gracefully, just like you said, and still keeping that dignity is an important pillar that we walk with every day. And I think that as we're building different products in the age tech space, I think it's something that should really be preserved. These elders have gone their entire lives being strong pillars in their life. I was just giving a talk and talking about my great grandmother's story. She was a single mother of 8 almost, and she not only was the single mother of 8, she was grandmother to 16 and great grandmother to over 50. So having that entire life where you are the pillar for all of these people, and then as you're aging, a lot of that independence is being taken away. I think that is it's a hard thing to swallow, and I think these innovation ecosystems tailoring towards these older adults, definitely have to think about that and just say, "Hey, this is a vulnerable time. We don't wanna just shove things in their face and just say, 'We know better for you.' Try to do it gracefully, try to do it with dignity," things like that. That's why the Goldilocks system, yes, we're tracking and preventing falls and looking for these unsafe conditions, but no part of our system will ever have a camera. We're using all cameraless technology to actually preserve that dignity in a vulnerable space like the shower.
And I love that point so much because it is often one that people forget. I think it's funny, we talked about, are you solving the right problem? And I think sometimes in age tech space specifically, we can start to view the older adult as, oh, that's the problem. The problem is that the older adult is falling. And, sometimes that's not the real problem. Maybe it's the older adult's fear of falling that you're really solving, or it's the older adult's dignity in the bathroom that you're really solving. Because maybe those fall prevention solutions involved having a caretaker in the bathroom watching you take a shower, or maybe having
Mhm.
a camera in the bathroom, right? So it's making sure you incorporate that older adult's identity and strength and dignity into your solution. I think it's something that we cannot forget in this space.
Yeah, I think that's really where my product specifically excels is just the fact that Goldilocks, our solution, our product, we'd be very happy if everywhere where a Goldilocks system is installed, no falls happen. The older adult isn't the problem. Them falling isn't the problem. It's really that fear. There are many older adults who stop showering because of that fear. They think, okay, I'll go in here. And yes, I heard many of my friends, same age as me, go in the bathroom and never come out. So it's that
Mm.
fear subconsciously always sitting on their head, making them not want to shower. So if we have a Goldilocks system there that gives you a sort of peace of mind. If you do fall, you will have someone alerted and giving you aid within 45 seconds. The average time in some care facilities is 8 minutes to an hour. So getting that quick response time is what we really strive for.
Mhm. Now, Donnie, what do you think maybe from like a city level, how we create a community for older adults to thrive?
I feel that what has been encouraging and important is you see that Mayor Dickens has a desire to hear from all of the communities, right, and understand their needs. And the people that are most vulnerable are not discarded or discounted, right? So creating spaces where you can better hear and understand their needs is something that I've seen him do and be very thoughtful about. And something as simple as there's this senior ball,
Mhm.
and so my parents are old enough to be admitted, and they come and they enjoy this moment where, it starts at like 3 o'clock
Yeah.
early afternoon, but they dress up and come together, and it's been going on for I think decades now. But like just to hold with the proper respect this population and community has been a really exciting thing for me because hopefully we all have parents that have aged a bit that are in that segment,
Mm.
and to be in a place where they are still taken into consideration when design decisions and city planning decisions are made. Because one of the big risks is if they don't have a seat at the table. And I guess
Mhm.
the good thing is usually they built the table, so they
Yeah.
they weren't left out of the decisions. But you can often see where it's not taken into account someone's experience. In fact, my mom, she's been spending more time with me in recent months, and she said, "Your shower and all showers are designed for the 30-year-old because there's
Yeah.
no handlebar. There's no bar to help prevent falling." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? I didn't think about that because that hasn't been my experience." But so, like, how do you, from the design, from the start of the planning, make sure that all of those perspectives, and this also ties back into what we were saying earlier about bringing together folks from different colleges and different walks of life, like diversity of thought is so important. And you can see oftentimes where you've got an echo chamber of people that have never considered someone else's experience before they build something. So
Mhm.
the more people you can talk to, the better. And we're a place where we try to welcome that type of engagement. Mayor Dickens talk often about Atlanta being a group project,
Yeah.
and so inviting all the people from the group to be heard has been, frustrating at times, right? Because you've got so many people to consider, but it's important to get to the best outcome.
And I think that's a really great thing to bring up because it's not even about how do we create a community for older adults through our innovation, but how do we inspire older adults to innovate in their own communities, right? Because, the 70-year-old of today is not the 70-year-old of 30 years ago. We have a lot of people that are getting older and they don't feel like how they thought it would feel to be a 70. There are those people that have declining health, but there's a lot of individuals say, I still feel pretty sharp. I feel like I have a lot to offer. I want to be active. I want to be engaged with this community, but through ageism or lack of access, they start to get kind of pushed to the margins, right? And the young folks come up and say, "Hey, we're going to solve these next problems. You're 70, go live in a home and, we don't want to hear from you," right? So, how do you think that not only do we create innovation to foster participation for older adults, but how do we get more older adults involved in innovating for their own well-being?
Well, 2 quick thoughts on that, and it's back to customer discovery because I don't know your life, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
unless you can hear from them to build for the segment, you need them to be engaged because there are a lot of assumptions that we may have that don't align with their reality. And so something that comes to mind, of course, there was, this loneliness epidemic and
Yeah.
particularly during COVID for all segments and all demographics, but, aging populations especially. And something that we found high engagement in was the use of VR. And so
Mm,
while someone may assume that old people don't like technology, like being able to just put this headset on and transport you to a different and familiar place and be able to connect with people was, we saw high adoption in that. And it's not that we as the city created these tools and put it in those communities. That's just the feedback that we've heard from people trying to solve this problem within that community. And so the thing is, if you left it to us, a bunch of 40-year-olds, that wouldn't have been the first thing that we put forth.
mm,
And so creating spaces where they can be engaged and involved is critical. Because your question was, how do we make sure that they are a part of the process and that they are
yeah.
feeling empowered to do so? I think that's a way to do it. And then a lot of them have been a part of these communities, and it's discouraging at times where they sometimes will feel like they've aged out. All the isms, right, are present. And I think some of it is just continuing to show up, and then in places where they are the expert, like, giving the proper deference. Let them cook, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely agree. When I was first building out my product, when I first got to Atlanta, I was thinking about all the things I would want in the shower. Like I like playing my music. I was trying to integrate Apple Music and things like that. I wanted to have Google Maps in there so I could see my route on the way to work while I'm in the shower. And as I realized I'm building this product for an elder, but at the time I was 18 years old thinking about what could be best for somebody who's lived 3 times my age, and
Yeah.
it just didn't make sense. So I really had to go back to the drawing board and do exactly what Donnie and Mayor Dickens said, bring all those people to the table. I went to these senior living communities, and I did over 350 interviews with senior living executives, senior living residents, caregivers, all the CNAs there, and my product evolved from there. Like, when you're trying to build a solution, ask your customers what they want before trying to hand them something and say, "Find a way to use it."
There's a founder on this topic. They actually lived in a senior living facility for, like, a year or 18 months, just back to, like, how do I integrate myself into the community and experience? And it's, like, real commitment to customer discovery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I thought it was a senior living resident that came up with this idea, but it's a young person that lived in the senior living community?
yeah, 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 young person. I think him and his team, they all actually lived there, short of being the actual elderly person, but,
Yeah.
close.
When I was in PT school, we watched a few. There's some great documentaries of like young folks that say, "Hey, let's go see what life is like in these retirement communities." And I think we like to believe that these retirement communities are just a lot of folks, sitting in their wheelchairs doing nothing. But a lot of times there's a lot of liveliness there and a lot of wisdom there that's, never taken up or never gleaned. So I've found it interesting being an individual that works with a lot of older adults to actually get to spend time with those older adults and see how much value is kind of just tossed to the wayside because we say, hey, you're older, you're retired, move on.
It's something I'm scared of, man. I mean, I hope I'm blessed to get old, but,
Uh,
I wanna make sure my useful life they talk about what is it, health span versus
Health span versus lifespan. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like, trying to extend that because if you're healthy and active and engaged, you might be 80 and still building something, but go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was just on the phone with my grandfather last night, and I went back to Chicago to help him install some Ring cameras around his house. He's
Mhm.
89 years old, and I still think he's smarter and stronger than me. He was the one carrying the ladder around the house so that I could get up on it and install the cameras up high. But I think that just working with elders and working in that space, you have to stay close with them. Like half the ideas I get for working through things with my product, I get from my 89-year-old grandfather. Just asking him, how was his day? What sort of things is he struggling with? And not even that, but he's a self-taught engineer and he talks me through different mechanical things I can work on in the product. So I think working with these elders and not thinking about the fact that they have 70 years, 80 plus years of experience. They know a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two. So I
Yeah.
think definitely relying on that and not throwing that experience to the wayside.
And I'm always curious about that from like a city or a nation economic standpoint. How much more value could we be capturing as a population if we don't tell people, hey, after 60, we don't need your value anymore, right? Thomas, just like your grandfather, I mean, all this lifelong expertise, seen so many things, yet is not being utilized except for your benefit, right? Which is great because you're his grandson. But what about all these other young folks that could really benefit from his expertise? I'm personally interested in how we capture maybe that 60-80, right? Like those people that are post retirement, but still are incredibly strong, incredibly witty, incredibly smart, and with all this experience. How do we continue to utilize that as an economy and as a community?
You know what comes to mind here, because there's this gap oftentimes, and Thomas mentioned still being a robotics coach. And so we've got this Johnson STEM Activity Center, which is a place where you can go and be in FIRST Robotics and
That's where I
learn
coach.
the space,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah.
like, they have a hard time finding coaches, but if instead of trying to convince Thomas and the other folks that are out jet setting and dating and whatever else, like, you have someone that might just be stuck in the house. And how do I remove the transportation barrier to bring them to a space where they could give these young people the knowledge that they've amassed over decades? It's a fun thing to think about because I didn't think about shopping there, you know, but, the value of having a grandparent. And so I was talking to my mom because my dad, he'd teach me how to change tires and, that probably the extent of the time we spend in cars. But
Mhm.
my grandfather on my mom's side, he was building them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I lost him at an age where I didn't get to benefit from that. There's someone that is the mechanic that was at Ford building cars from the beginning of the assembly line, and then you
Yeah.
could bring that and teach others how to do it. It would be interesting thought.
Yeah, Donnie, I think that's the next mission. Create like some sort of like knowledge translation center in Atlanta that specifically targets older adults with some sort of specialty skill. They're there as mentors. And then if you want to go learn how to change a tire, change your oil, I mean, even robotics, computer engineering, finances, right? Just some older adult, 65 and above, who has experience in that just was willing to volunteer their time, right? Solves the loneliness epidemic for older adults, solves that knowledge translation issue, gives young people a chance to interact with a diverse community. I think we got something there.
Did you already have that in mind? Like, did you want to plant that when this
That's the
crossed
entire
mind?
reason of this podcast. Yeah, I brought you here today to pitch my idea. Yeah, I want $200,000 investment. I think about it a lot because I meet so many older adults who you can tell they have the skill set and they just need a place to utilize it.
Mm, that's dope.
But I know we are
Cool.
brushing right up against the edge of our time today, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. I really appreciate both of y'all being out and sharing your expertise. I think we got a lot of great insights in building community and creating innovation, and hyped up Atlanta a lot in the process.
Well, that was my goal at the beginning of the call,
Yeah.
right? How do we hype up Atlanta? But,
Mhm.
thank you again for, bringing us back together 'cause I've known Thomas for a while now and for giving us this forum to share our experience with you.
Yeah.
And with that said, I mean, if anybody listening is interested in what either of y'all are doing, where can the people out there get in touch with you?
I'm Goldilocks Smart Solutions on all platforms. We have a website, goldilockssmartsolutions.com. You can reach out to me directly through my LinkedIn by my name, Thomas Bittings Jr., or just email me, Thomas at Goldilocks Smart Solutions.
And I'll say Donnie Beamer, just find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to, one, just reach me or track all the activity that we have coming out of the office. And so ATL Tech Hub is our website, atltechhub.com, and we're in the process of continuously updating that. But LinkedIn is probably a breadth of resources and announcements, not just from me, but from others that I try to share and make sure reaches as many people as possible.
Well, got it. You heard him. Definitely, if you're interested as a senior living facility or as a corporate stalker, make sure you get Goldilocks Smart Solutions on your shelves. Make sure you get that incorporated in your home or your senior care facility. If you are a young entrepreneur or a corporation that wants to get involved in Innovation Atlanta, reach out to Donnie. Guys, it's been really great talking with you. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a
Be
good
blessed.